A group of Greek sponge divers from the island of Symi are making their way home after a long season working the North African coast. A storm blows up, nasty and sudden, the way Mediterranean storms get. They take shelter near a tiny, barely inhabited island called Antikythera. It sits between the Greek mainland and Crete. Most people had never heard of it. Most people still haven't. When the storm clears, one of the divers, a man named Elias Stadiatis, goes down to check the seabed. Standard routine. He's checking for sponges, for sea life, just to get a read on the area. He comes back up. And his crewmates say he looks wrong. Pale. Shaken. He tells them he saw a heap of dead naked women on the seabed. He had found a shipwreck. And those dead women were marble and bronze statues, dozens of them, lying on the ocean floor, 45 meters down, exactly where they'd fallen when the ship went under somewhere around 60 to 70 BCE. Over 2,000 years earlier. The divers reported the wreck to Greek authorities, and what followed was the first major underwater archaeological excavation in recorded history. They pulled up statues, glassware, jewelry, coins, pottery, and one small, corroded, barnacle-covered lump of bronze about the size of a large shoebox. Nobody knew what that lump was, not then. It would take the better part of a century to even begin to understand it. The encrusted lump sat in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. For a while, nobody paid much attention to it. The statues were the stars of the collection, bronze warriors, marble youths, the famous Antikythera ephebe. The strange bronze lump was a footnote. Then, in 1902, a Greek archaeologist named Valerios Stais was examining it and noticed something remarkable. The crust had cracked open slightly. And inside, he could see what appeared to be a gear wheel. A toothed bronze gear wheel. In a find from 60 BCE. He suggested the object might be some kind of astronomical clock or calculating device. Most of the academic community didn't buy it. The consensus was essentially, this can't be what it looks like. Ancient Greeks didn't have gear-based mechanical devices. It must be a navigational instrument that got mixed in with the wreck from a later period. A medieval astrolabe that somehow ended up with the ancient artifacts. There was a real reluctance to accept what the evidence was suggesting. That's a very human response, honestly. When something doesn't fit the world as you understand it, the brain reaches for an explanation that preserves the existing picture. It would be another 50 years before a British science historian named Derek J. de Sola Price took a long, hard, properly scientific look at the object, and what he found blew the existing picture completely apart. Let me describe what we now know is inside this object. By the time modern researchers got access with X-ray imaging in the 1970s, and then with high-resolution CT scanning in the 2000s, the picture that emerged was staggering. The Antikythera mechanism contains at least 37 interlocking bronze gear wheels. Possibly more. It's corroded, fragmented, not fully intact. The gears are cut with extraordinary precision. The teeth are evenly spaced, the angles consistent. This is precision metalwork that, by the standards of anything we've found from the ancient world, should simply not exist. The device originally had a wooden or bronze casing, essentially a box. On the front face, there were at least 2 large circular dials. On the back, 2 more spiral dials. These weren't decorative. Each one tracked something specific in the sky. The front face had a dial showing the Egyptian calendar, 365 days. There was also a dial tracking the positions of the sun and moon through the zodiac. There were pointers indicating the position of the 5 planets known to ancient Greeks: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Let me just pause there for a second. The positions of 5 planets, tracked simultaneously, through a system of interlocking bronze gears, built over 2,000 years ago, before the telescope, before calculus, before modern metallurgy. Take a breath with me here, because this is where it gets really interesting. On the back, there was a spiral dial with 235 divisions. This represented a 19-year cycle known as the Metonic cycle, the period after which lunar and solar calendars realign. This was used to predict eclipses with remarkable accuracy. There was also a dial tracking the Saros cycle, the 18-year, 11-day cycle by which solar and lunar eclipses repeat, and a smaller dial counting a 76-year cycle called the Callippic cycle. And then, discovered only in 2021 by researchers at University College London using advanced polynomial analysis of the CT scans, there were additional planetary mechanisms on the front panel that nobody had fully decoded before. The full mechanism appears to have modeled the motion of all 5 visible planets, plus the Sun and Moon, with a level of mathematical sophistication that required knowledge of what we now call the pin-and-slot epicyclic mechanism, a system for representing the variable speed of planets as they appear to move from Earth. This wasn't just an astronomical clock, this was a working model of the solar system, turned by hand, geared to the sky. So what could you actually use this device for? What did it do in practical terms? You'd turn a hand crank on the side. As you turned, all the gears moved in their precise ratios, and the pointers on all the dials advanced proportionally. Want to know where the moon will be in 6 months? Turn the crank 6 months forward. The pointer tells you. Want to predict whether there'll be a solar eclipse during the Olympic Games of next year? Use the Saros dial. It will tell you not just whether there'll be an eclipse, but its character. Whether it'll be partial or total. Whether it'll be visible from your location. There's something that appears on the Saros dial that particularly struck researchers. Each eclipse prediction is accompanied by a small Greek letter, a code indicating the eclipse's color. Because ancient Greeks believed the color of an eclipse was an omen, a message about what was coming. So this device wasn't just a scientific calculator. It was also embedded in the cultural and religious life of its users. It answered not just when, but what does it mean? The mechanism also tracked the 4-year cycle of the Panhellenic Games, the Olympiad, the Pythian Games, the Isthmian Games, the Nemean Games. These were civic and religious events of enormous importance in the ancient Greek world. Knowing when they fell wasn't just culturally convenient, it was politically necessary. Think about who would have used this device. Not a farmer. Not a soldier. This is a precision instrument of extraordinary value and complexity. This belonged to someone, or an institution, for whom astronomical prediction, calendrical calculation, and the timing of sacred events was a serious, high-stakes business. A philosopher. A king. A priest. Maybe all 3 at once. Now, who made this? That's the question that has occupied researchers for decades. The inscriptions on the device are in ancient Greek, specifically a Doric dialect consistent with the Greek island of Rhodes. The ship carrying the mechanism appears, based on other cargo, to have been traveling a route that passed through the eastern Mediterranean, possibly originating in or near Rhodes. Rhodes, in the 1st and 2nd centuries BCE, was one of the great intellectual centers of the ancient world. It had a famous astronomical school. The mathematician and astronomer Hipparchus, who created the first comprehensive star catalogue and made foundational contributions to trigonometry, worked on or near Rhodes in roughly 140 BCE. Some researchers believe the mechanism's mathematical foundations, particularly its treatment of the moon's irregular orbit, reflect Hipparchus's specific theories about lunar motion. Theories that were genuinely cutting edge in the 2nd century BCE. And then there's the shadow of Archimedes. Archimedes, who lived roughly 287 to 212 BCE in Syracuse, was widely known in antiquity for building mechanical devices that modeled the heavens. The Roman statesman Cicero wrote, about a century after the Antikythera wreck, that a Roman general named Marcus Claudius Marcellus had captured 2 remarkable devices from Syracuse, devices that moved to show the motions of the sun, moon, and planets. Cicero called them planetaria and described them with obvious awe. Cicero even said he had seen one of these devices. Could those devices have been relatives of the Antikythera mechanism? Could they have come from the same tradition? We can't prove it, but we can say this: the Antikythera mechanism is not a one-off. It appears to represent a tradition of mechanical astronomical devices in the ancient Greek world, a tradition that, somehow, almost entirely vanished. Here's the part that I find most haunting about the Antikythera mechanism. After the ancient Greek and Roman world, devices of comparable mechanical sophistication, interlocking gear systems of this precision and complexity, don't appear again in the historical record for roughly 1,400 to 1,500 years. The next objects of comparable mechanical complexity that we know of are the European astronomical clocks of the 14th century CE. The earliest known example is the Salisbury Cathedral clock, built around 1386. That is a gap of nearly 15 centuries. What happened? The short answer is, we don't fully know. The fall of the Western Roman Empire, the loss of manuscripts, the disruption of the intellectual traditions of the ancient Mediterranean world, the Arabic scholarly tradition preserved and expanded on Greek science, the work of mathematicians and astronomers was kept alive in Islamic centers of learning, but the specific mechanical tradition that produced the Antikythera mechanism seems to have disappeared. The knowledge of how to build these things, and perhaps the cultural demand for them, went away. And here's the uncomfortable implication of that. If the Antikythera mechanism hadn't sunk with that ship, if it had survived, if even one example of this technology had been preserved and studied, the history of mechanical engineering might have been accelerated by more than 1,000 years. The Industrial Revolution, the Scientific Revolution, clocks, navigation, machinery, all of it potentially centuries earlier than it happened. That's not science fiction, that's a reasonable historical inference. And it sits in that display case in Athens like a quiet, respectful reproach to everything we think we know about the pace of human progress. Okay, let's fast forward to the modern chapter, because this is where the story gets a second wind. Derek Price's pioneering work in the 1970s used early X-ray imaging and was genuinely groundbreaking for its time. He identified the basic gear structure and published his findings in a landmark 1974 paper. But the technology of the era limited what he could see. In 2005 and 2006, the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project, a multinational collaboration involving researchers from Greece, the UK, the US, and France, brought in two extraordinary pieces of technology. A surface imaging scanner that created three-dimensional models of the fragment surfaces. And an 8-ton, custom-built X-Tech microfocus CT scanner that could penetrate the corroded bronze and produce 3D images of the internal structure at 0.05 mm resolution. The results were published in Nature in 2006. And they transformed our understanding of the mechanism. For the first time, researchers could read inscriptions buried inside the fragments, text that had been hidden beneath layers of corrosion for 2 millennia. These inscriptions turned out to be essentially a user manual. Instructions describing what each dial showed and how to read it. Some of it read like ancient technical writing. Some of it was almost poetic, describing the device as a way to unfold the heavens. Then in 2021, a team at University College London led by Professor Tony Freeth published another landmark paper. Using polynomial analysis of the CT data, they proposed a complete working model for the front panel planetary display, something that had never been satisfactorily reconstructed before. Their model incorporated a complex epicyclic system using pin-and-slot mechanisms to represent the irregular orbits of the planets. The UCL team then built a physical working model using modern manufacturing techniques, just to prove their reconstruction was mechanically viable. It worked perfectly. After 2,000 years at the bottom of the sea and another century of study, the Antikythera mechanism was turning again. Tracking the sky. Doing exactly what it was built to do. I want to be transparent about what is still genuinely uncertain, because the Antikythera mechanism is a subject where enthusiastic people, and I count myself among them, sometimes get slightly ahead of the evidence. We don't know for certain who built it. The Rhodes connection is strong but not proven. The Archimedes connection is intriguing but circumstantial. No maker's mark has been found. No contemporary document says, this device was made by so-and-so on such and such date. We don't know how many of these devices existed. The Antikythera mechanism may have been extraordinarily rare, a unique masterwork. Or it may have been one of dozens. The fact that Cicero described similar devices suggests they weren't completely unheard of. But we found no others. We don't know exactly what the ship was carrying them to, or from. The cargo included items from multiple regions. The ship may have been transporting looted Greek art to Rome. This was the period of Roman conquest of the Greek world, and the movement of Greek art and luxury goods to Rome was constant. But we can't be sure. We also don't know how many more fragments of the mechanism are still on the seabed. The 2017 Antikythera expedition by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and the Greek Ephrate of Underwater Antiquities found new areas of the wreck site and recovered additional artifacts. More pieces may yet surface. More knowledge may yet emerge. And here's the thing about all of this uncertainty. It's not a weakness of the subject, it's a strength. It means the story isn't finished. It means the best discovery about the Antikythera mechanism might still be coming. I want to step back for a second and ask a bigger question. Why does this matter? Why is a corroded lump of bronze from a 2,000-year-old shipwreck worth a 16-minute video in 2025? Here's my honest answer. We have a tendency, all of us, even historians, even scientists, to imagine human progress as a straight line. A ladder. Primitive at the bottom. Advanced at the top. Ancient people doing ancient things. Modern people doing modern things. And never the twain shall meet. The Antikythera mechanism destroys that picture. Because what it shows us is that human intelligence, the specific kind of abstract mathematical, mechanical, astronomical intelligence that we associate with modernity, existed fully and brilliantly in 150 BCE. The person or persons who designed this device understood differential gear systems. They understood epicyclic motion. They understood how to encode multiple interdependent mathematical cycles into a single mechanical object. They were, in every meaningful intellectual sense, our equals. And they did it with hand tools, bronze, and time. There's something very leveling about that. The story of the Antikythera mechanism isn't, look how clever we are to figure out what this old device does. It's, look how clever they were to build it. The humility runs in one direction only. It also raises questions we should sit with. How much did we lose? Not just the physical mechanism, but the knowledge it represented. The mathematical traditions. The craft traditions. The schools and teachers and students who understood how to build something like this. What else vanished with them? What other capacities of the ancient world are we simply unaware of because the objects didn't survive? I don't think the Antikythera mechanism means ancient people had secret advanced technology or anything like that. I want to be clear about that. It means ancient people were people. Brilliant, creative, mathematically sophisticated, technically inventive people. Whose world was more complex, and whose achievements were more profound, than we sometimes give them credit for. The Antikythera mechanism sits today in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. It's in a climate-controlled case, lit carefully. The original fragments are dark and corroded, beautiful in the specific way that very old, very important things are beautiful. Nearby, there are reconstructions showing what it would have looked like when new. Bright brass. Elegant dials. Pointers turning against the sky. If you're ever in Athens, go see it. Don't rush past it. Stand with it for a few minutes, because what you're looking at is a message from someone who lived 2,000 years ago. Someone who looked up at the same sky you look at, who was awed by the same movements of the moon and sun and planets, who wanted to understand, who built something, with their hands, with their minds, with everything they had, that would capture some of that understanding and hold on to it. They didn't know it would end up on the ocean floor. They didn't know it would sit unrecognized in a museum for 50 years. They didn't know it would take CT scanners and polynomial analysis to read the full depth of what they built. They just built it. Because they wanted to understand the sky. That's the same reason you're watching this video right now. Thank you for being here. If this story moved you even a little, subscribe, there are more like this. And drop a comment. If you could ask the makers of the Antikythera mechanism one question, what would it be? I'll be reading every one. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next time.